One of the most telling interactions over the past month has been Max Blumenthal's run-in with Matthew Miller, spokesperson for the State Department. When Max confronted him about Israeli war crimes, and Matthew Miller said, "We are going to handle any disputes and strategy between us and the Israelis in private," right? And that really forecasted everything that we've seen since. But Max got into the press room again, and here's another State Department stooge that Max grills brilliantly once more.
In March 2021, Secretary Blinken accused China of the crime of genocide for its alleged treatment of the Uyghur minority, but he didn't accuse them of killing on any mass scale or forcible transfer. Now we see with Israel's military assault on Gaza, something like every 200 people in the Gaza Strip has been eliminated. Over 4,000 children killed. The Ministry of Intelligence, as Sam pointed out, in Israel has published a blueprint for the forced transfer of the entire Palestinian population to Egypt. We have the intent to commit genocide expressed at the highest level of the Israeli government, including Netanyahu himself referring to the Palestinian population as Amalek, the biblical Amalek. So I wonder, when you're accusing one...
So the Amalek are biblical enemies of the Jews. So in invoking that, and Netanyahu did get a lot of coverage for this, in invoking that, he was explicitly framing this as a civilizational battle, which of course means us against them, which of course in his mind, he's giving himself a license to kill. And no one is intervening to do anything to stop him from carrying out that vision. So that's why he brought up that word.
Well, and can you imagine? We covered this the other day, where Chuck Schumer, with great disdain, talks about how they belong on the land because it's in the Torah, and with great disdain says, but they don't believe in the Torah.
Right?
Can you imagine if a member of any other religion was in our government and said something to that effect? But they don't believe in the Quran. But this land belongs to us. But they don't believe in Jesus, right? I mean, they'd be pilloried by the same liberal media that will kiss Chuck Schumer's ass all day and all night.
Exactly.
Country of genocide without accusing them of mass killing, and then blocking ceasefires to enable another country's military assault. What metric are you using to determine genocide, or is this just political rhetoric?
It's certainly not political rhetoric. The department, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, we have a rigorous process in place for...
You could tell the A-team quit at the State Department because this is the guy that they end up sending out. This is a big story, by the way, which we were going to do. We're going to do this on the Patreon tomorrow because we already teased it out in a previous segment where we pretty much forecasted this was going to happen. But there is a dissent memo now that has been published at the Department of State expressing contempt for the administration's whole handling of this. And a lot of people have been shuffled around and stepped down, and that's how you get the fucking backbencher like this guy comes out and stammers his way through this.
Evaluating whether something constitute as genocide or not, and that is true in any country that that situation might be being looked at. That is not a term that we have assessed pertains to this current conflict. We are, of course, monitoring the evolving situation and are examining facts as they develop. This continues to be an incredibly challenging and fraught situation, but it's also important to remember that Hamas bears responsibility for sparking this war. They have brought this tragic war to Gaza.
Okay, well, President Biden has accused the Russian government of genocide.
I graduated in the bottom 10% of my class at Toro College. I can't believe I got to this podium.
Exactly.
Important to remember that Hamas bears responsibility for sparking this war. They have brought this tragic war to Gaza.
Okay, well, President Biden has accused the Russian government of genocide for its actions in Ukraine, where in 2 years it has killed as many civilians as Israel has killed in 1 month in the Gaza Strip. So how do you account for that disparity where you're assisting one country and accusing the other of genocide when the country you're assisting has systematically killed so many more people in 1 month?
Now, I just had to pause it here, just because, to be fair, I thought the civilian death toll in Ukraine was far higher than that. Then again, they are throwing anyone and everyone on the front lines in Ukraine. So that may be where he's coming up with that number. But I just wanted to pause it there because obviously the death toll in Ukraine is far, far higher than 10,000. But now, the average age of a new recruit is somewhere in the 40s, right? So like everybody's being pushed
is he
to the
talking
front
about
lines there.
civilians? I thought he was talking about
No,
civilians.
he's talking about civilians, but that's what I mean. When they are throwing people into a meat grinder in Ukraine, they're making them combatants. So maybe that's where he's getting that number from. You know what I mean?
Okay.
The low civilian count. So I just wanted to pause there just to give a little bit of an asterisk there because I'll have to look into that more.
Those circumstances are totally and completely not the same, and to make a comparison like that, candidly, is incredibly inappropriate. We have been...
Ukraine is a puppet state of the West, and Gaza is, a concentration camp full of disposable people who are of no use to the West. So that comparison doesn't hold.
And they are victims of a client state that we see as central to our geopolitical ambitions.
Yeah, exactly.
Please don't interrupt me. We have been, have raised directly with the Israeli government about the need to distinguish between Hamas terrorists and Palestinian civilians. This is something that the secretary has raised directly on his travels. We even laid out.
And what were the results of his travels? What came of those travels? Benjamin Netanyahu saying, no, we will continue our bombardment as planned. So again, like, what results do you have to show for any of this rhetoric that you're trying to spin here?
The president said, pretty please.
Yeah, exactly.
Netanyahu refused. Our efforts are ongoing.
We're asking nicely. We're respecting the norms and the guardrails, doing this the right way.
The president has challenged Prime Minister Netanyahu to a game of rock, paper, scissors over Zoom.
Yeah.
By which the matter will be decided.
That we believe that there are commitments that can be made additionally on dealing with protecting civilian life more effectively. And we're watching very closely to make sure that happens.
But you've referred to Palestinian civilians as human shields. Doesn't that blur the distinction between civilians and militants?
I am not. We have not referred to Palestinian civilians as human shields. We have said.
What?
I sat here and heard Matthew Miller refer to them as human shields.
We have said that Hamas is using Palestinian civilians as human shields. That is not hyperbole. That is something that we have seen Hamas do as they continue to
and that gives cover for Israel to kill them.
Civilian infrastructure across Gaza.
Wouldn't that be blurring the distinction between civilians and combatants? If you say Hamas is using civilians as human shields, wouldn't that be in some ways justifying the killing of civilians because they happen to be in the way, in their homes?
There is no one in this administration that is justifying killing of civilians. Any civilian life loss is incredibly troubling, heartbreaking to us. Any number above 0 is deeply troubling to us. What we are doing is we are working with our Israeli partners to ensure that steps can be taken to minimize the impact on civilian life. And we also have believed that there is a moral imperative, there is a strategic imperative to take steps to minimize loss of civilian life. I'm going to work through them. I've answered like 4 of your questions. You could.
Wow.
I mean, look, in terms of slinging bullshit with poise, he's good at his job.
Yeah, maybe he'll move up. Maybe he'll move up in the ranks there.
Yeah. No, I thought he handled it pretty well by the standards of the State Department.
But Max's question about the human shields, about like let's assume that is true, and let's just work through this. Well, Israel has ground forces. They have intelligence, right? They have pretty sophisticated surveillance capabilities, which they use against the people of Gaza on a daily basis, right? Even before October 7th.
Yeah.
So if you have these surveillance capabilities, you have this ground troop force, why can't you go in and root out the terrorists. Like the human shield argument just gives you license to level, say, a refugee camp from the sky, right? And then they say, well, they use the citizens as human shields, so there's nothing we could do, right? Like, you have the intelligence, you have the backing of the United States, by far the most sophisticated intelligence systems in the world. You have all of that at your disposal. You have an endless supply of cash and resources from us. You can't use those resources to more precisely target the actual enemy combatants that you're targeting. But of course they don't want to. It all goes back to the previous segment and the tweet that we showed in the previous segment, which is that the goal was always to clear the place out.
Right.
What is the thing you say on the show all the time? There are no contradictions. Only what? There are no contradictions.
There are no contradictions. When you think you found a contradiction, check your premises.
Check your premises. Right, exactly. So if you are operating from the premise that this is an anti-terrorism operation, what they're doing doesn't really make sense as an anti-terrorism operation. Leveling a refugee camp in the hopes that you're going to get the one Hamas commander that you said was there, that doesn't make sense. If your premise is, well, let's clear the place out and claim it for ourselves, we'll kill whoever doesn't cooperate, and the people who do cooperate will get lost, well, then all of a sudden it makes a whole lot more sense, doesn't it?
Keaton, you're talking about the world's most moral army.
Please clap.